You can become a hero. Buy Orphaned Account on AO3. Episode 9, Chapter 6. It Takes Patience. In the morning, he placed the new clothes into a duffel bag along with a few things he took from the kitchen, and she caught him midway through putting a box into his bag, simply shrugging before telling him that they'll be heading out in 10 minutes. Fuyumi was the most upset to see him leave. She kicked him once before throwing him into another cold embrace, ordering him to contact her as soon as possible. He hoped she'd understand that she wasn't the reason he didn't want to stay. It just didn't feel right to stay in the house. Not while he wasn't Toya. While on the way to Hawks' apartment, the driver stopped at a grocery store, and she handed him money, more than likely ever than in the past, telling him that it was for capturing the villain yesterday. He used the money to buy food for the apartment, along with more lotions and the disgusting coffee mix that Hawks insisted was the best part of his morning. As he wandered around the store, two people stopped and asked him if he was the one who captured a kidnapper yesterday. It was odd to be noticed for doing something good. They both thanked him for his action, leaving him with a bizarre feeling in his chest. He took the 6 bags, stuffing them into his car. Minutes later, he was lunging up all the bags through the dingy apartment building. The door was left unlocked. Hawks must have been anticipating his arrival. Dabi knocked down the door, dragging himself to the kitchen. Hawks was passed out in the living room, still completely dressed as he clung to the throw pillow. Drool leaking from his mouth as his wings twitched like a dog that would growl whilst asleep. Dabi was surprised he didn't wake the hero during his adventure of throwing out piles of moldy food and replacing it with newer, definitely tastier, products. He had only checked on him for a moment to see how he was faring, but he hadn't moved an inch. Tumbling the piece of paper in his pocket, Dabi went to work. He cooked as quietly as he could, using his fingers to light the stove easier. Much to his relief, the page he had taken was very precious about how to make the dish. Despite the fact that it wasn't much of a breakfast food, well, it was past noon, so it would have to do for lunch. He had heard Hawks during their meetings ask him to come to get food with him, something that was as polite but stupid offer at the time. Even so, he learned that the hero had an obsession with chicken yakitori. Surprisingly, it was an easy dish to cook. He only had to throw away 2 burnt skewers because he was spending too much time reading the page to make sure he wasn't fucking it up. By the time he was placing them into 2 plates, Honk stumbled in, eyes wide yet filled with confusion and tiredness. What smells good? I, made food. Dabi supplied, then handed Hawks a plate. He looked like he was about to cry at the sight. Wait, how? You're supposed to cook this on the grill, right? Hawks? Yeah? Shut the fuck up and eat the chicken. The hero didn't complain any further. Jumping up onto the counter, he set his plate in his lap and began to dig into his meal. Dabi left 2 for himself, but he didn't like the taste of it. He had a dislike for things too flavorful, so he set the over skewer on the Hawks' plate, much to his delight. His feet swayed as he ate, stuffing himself until it was gone and the dish was pretty much licked clean. It had been a while since he had the money to eat it, it seemed. That was great. Hawks cooed as he set the plate in the sink beside him, a lazy grin gracing his lips. But the chicken was way undercooked. Then why the fuck you eat it? Dabi asked, watching as the hero gave him a shrug and jumped down. I was hungry. Dabi didn't have much time to ponder over if Hawks was even partly human because soon the bird was upon him, hands moving up to cup his cheeks. Dabi let out a noise, pushing away. But the hero followed, chiding him to calm down for a second. Dabi grumbled, but stayed still as Hawks examined his face closely, then moved his hands to his hair. They ran through it a few times before pulling away, a satisfied smile on Hawks' face. You looked ridiculous. Did you even look yourself in the mirror earlier? Didn't think it mattered. Dabi shrugged, running a hand through his hair to mess it up again. Hawks' eyes twitched in annoyance, sending up 2 feathers to halt his actions. Dabi huffed and tugged his hand away, slipping at the feathers until they drifted back to the ground lifeless. Rocking back and forth on his heel, the man before him hummed, then asked, "So, are you gonna stay with your family? I can help you pack. I brought back stacks of food, and now you're trying to kick me out. Where's that whole mikase tsukasa?" Horribly butchered that last sentence. Hawks laughed, scratching his neck. There was a small silence before Hawks began to comb a hand through one of his wings, something he tended to do when he was mulling over a topic in his mind, trying to think of the right words. "I just expected you wanted to go home to your family. You must have missed them a lot, so I guess I thought the food was your way of saying goodbye." "I'm 24 years old. I'd rather share an apartment with you than move back in with them. At least you aren't as annoying as a ton of little siblings," Dabi stated, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. His eyebrows twitched as Hawks's wings perked, his body leaning closer whilst trying to balance his lean frame on his perch. "You mean it?" His eyes were twinkling. Dabi could feel his body temperature rise at the sight of them. But he pushed it down with an annoyed grunt from his throat. He hated when he gave those hopeful eyes, so wide and cute. He was uncomfortable. It was like Hawks believed that Dabi was the epiphany of outstanding citizen instead of a monster. Like everything he's done and what he looks like never seemed to faze those soft eyes. "Don't make me change my mind." Hawks beamed at that, jumping down from the counter. Dabi was afraid he'll pull him into another one of those bear hugs, but the doorbell ringing made the hero stop quickly. He turned to his direction of the door, head clocking as if he wasn't knowing what to expect. Then, the flap on the door opened. A letter was pushed through the silt. It was wrapped in a light purple envelope and had no return address. Dabi could see the cursive writing of Hawks' hero name on the front as the hero turned it over sometimes. "Weird. I usually get my fan mail tomorrow. They must have had this delivered themselves. It must be one of the other tenants. Huh. I suppose." Dabi replied. Hawks plucked one of his feathers, sharpening it to cut cleanly through the envelope. The paper was crisp and white, black ink drained into the pen. Dabi wasn't able to continue to look over Hawks' shoulder as he read, hunched over the fan mail. Leaving the hero to his work, Dabi walked to the dining room table and sat down amongst the letters. He noticed a bunch were stuffed into a wastebasket by the chair Hawks usually occupied. He wasn't one to snoop, but his attention caught when he read the last part of the sentence sticking out of a crumpled letter. He plucked it from the trash and smoothed it out with his hands. While it wasn't written with a pink glitter pen, the words weren't as girlish and cute as one expects. No, the letter was written with pure, unadulterated hate. "Hawks, I've been a fan of you since I was a kid. I always thought you were so cool, and I tried to meet you so many times. I'm happy I never did, because not punching you then and there would have been my biggest regret of life. My mom was nearly killed in the high-end attack, and you let the man who almost doomed dozens of people go? How could you live with yourself? People have been saying you've been a part of the league recently, and honestly, I hope Endeavor fucking kills you. You aren't a real hero if you are helping the villains like this. Hope your other fans get a reality check and realize what a piece of shit you are. Go to hell along with that stitch-faced bastard." Dabi stared in disbelief at the letter. He understood that him being free upset people, but saying Hawks deserved to die? Frowning, the page began to singe back, then eventually crumbled to ash in his hands. He dusted them off his pants and looked up to see Hawks was still reading the letter. His eyes were wide, breath halted as his shoulders shook, wings pressed against his back. His feathers trembled, and Dabi thought for a moment that they'd pop off and start attacking him. They didn't. "Hawks?" Dabi called softly, eyeing his wings. Hawks slowly took in a shaky breath and folded the paper. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He sent Dabi one of his stupid smiles and shook his head. "Sorry, just give me a second. I think I forgot to do something." Tucking the letter into his pocket, Hawks excused himself to his bedroom. Dabi remained in the quiet room, listening closely to choke back sobs echoing past the door, something he could easily blocked out by turning on the TV. However, his legs felt like lead, and the remote laid across the room. Instead, he laid a hand on the trash can and set the letters ablaze, hoping that if the smoke alarm went off, it would snap Hawks out of his own mind. Fuck! Oh, okay. Ah! I wish I was joking. This infuriates me, but I know how much being in the spotlight can attract you to hate and shit. I really hope that I never get big enough. Well, I mean, if I get big enough, I could do fully this. And I would love that. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. The bigger you get, the more hate you have. Right? And that shit could start to consume you. Trust me, I would know. That shit starts to consume. Right? Like, I've mentioned this before, but I had a fanfic that was really big. I'm not gonna say what it was, what fandom, especially where. Okay, it was Wattpad, but still. I'm not gonna say much other than that. And that was one of the fics. I had some others that were in other places. Anyways, but it exploded, and it was really big. And back then I was under an alias that was not Echo Rainstorm. It was not IKEA Addiction. IKEA Addiction was yet to be born. It was a completely different one that I absolutely loved at the time. And it's not ones that you guys are gonna know. You guys are never gonna be able to figure this one out, because I don't know how the fuck I ended up getting that one too. And I'm never gonna refer to myself like that ever again, because fuck that shit. But it got really big, and like, yeah, I loved seeing all the supportive comments. But then I would see the hateful comments, and it would eat up at me. And it got to a point where, like, I had so many people it was either hateful comments, nice comments, or comments begging for me to continue the story. To the point where it was no longer fun to do the story. But point taken is, it's a double-edged sword to get big. Because you get both good and positive, positive, good comments and people supporting you, but you also get hate. And obviously back then I didn't know how to deal with it, and like my heart breaks for Hawks here. Because like, fuck. I want to know what that one goddamn letter said, the one that he was reading and then had to excuse himself. And it's the fact that Hawks is trying to hide this from Dabi. He doesn't want Dabi to know how much this is affecting him. And that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, honestly. Next one is Hawks come back. Summary, Dabi learns about comfort. Okay. Hopefully Hawks gets comforted by Dabi. I don't know, maybe we could get some more Dabi. What was that? Things that birds do? The pruning? Pruning? I think it is pruning. I don't know if it's pruning. Whatever, the what's it called? The touching of the wings, which, again, as an ex-bird owner, side-eye, I'm sorry, that's getting a little, okay. If you're not a bird owner, and you don't know about wings, there are certain areas you are not to touch on your bird, or limit as much as you need to touch in those areas on your bird, because those are areas that a bird's mate touches, right? So the back, specifically in between the wings and the wings themselves, right? You do not touch those unless absolutely need to basis. Kind of, you don't caress. If you see that there are certain wings that, there's certain, like, feathers that have not been, what's it called? Because new feathers come out with this little shell thingy. If you see that new feathers are there that haven't been pruned, I guess, you don't touch those. Unless your bird has a medical reason on why it can't do it itself, you don't touch those. Same with the back of the neck, but specifically the wings is what we're focusing here. So keep that in mind. Hawks is a bird. Dabi is, and has been, touching said Hawks' bird wings on a regular basis. So, a I'll let you draw conclusions. Because it releases certain hormones in birds that tells them it's time for the for the creating of an egg, for lack of better words. So, like, apart from that, I really do hope that, like, Dabi comforts Hawks. I don't know, Hawks needs a hug. Somebody give that man a hug. Somebody put that man in therapy. But, like, I really hope Hawks gets comforted and that Dabi's comforting him. Also, the fact that Hawks ate that chicken raw, kind of. I wonder, is him being a bird makes it so he doesn't have to worry about that? Like, he could eat meat raw and not have to worry? Or does that still affect him? Because if it still affects him, I'm sorry. You're that gay that you're gonna risk salmonella for him? And if not, you're that gay that you're gonna eat it without complaint? You know? Okay, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server, merch shop, and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.